Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with great recent recordings stuff that will keep us happy in the new millennium, where we know we're in great shape since the year 2000. And today we're talking about Grieg. Everything there is to talk about Grieg, now particularly his orchestral works. This is actually a fascinating niche story in the history of the classical repertoire, because there are multiple cycles of Grieg orchestral works which have come out since the year 2000. And I have two of them right here, just so that you know what they are. One is the complete orchestral music with the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra of Norway under Ole Christian Ruud. And this was recorded on BIS between 2002 to 2006. So it made it to the new millennium. And the other is this series with the Malmö Symphony Orchestra and the Royal Scottish National Orchestra under Bjarte Engeset on Naxos. And they all have the same stuff, basically. It's all the same stuff. And the performances are excellent in both cases, really first class, superb. And you get, just so that you know, well, let's see, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff here. You get the Concert Overture in Autumn, the Piano Concerto, the Symphonic Dances, the Sletter, Suite for Orchestra, Norwegian Dances, Funeral March in Memory of Richard Nordrock, the Bridal Procession Passes By, the Ballade in its orchestral version, Bell Ringing, which was an orchestration of one of the lyric pieces, the Symphony in C minor, the Old Norwegian Romance with Variations, 3 orchestral pieces from Sigurd Jorsalfar, Peer Gynt Suites numbers 1 and 2, The First Meeting, The Mountain Thrall, 6 orchestral songs, the complete Peer Gynt, not the suites, the complete incidental music with singers and chorus and people screaming at you in Norwegian and all of that stuff. Before a Southern Convent, Bergliot, oh, it's beautiful. All the string music, the 2 elegiac melodies, 2 melodies for string orchestra, the Holberg Suite, 2 lyric pieces, 2 Nordic melodies, and the Lyric Suite. And finally, Landkjenning, Sigurd Jorsalfar, Oleg Tryggvason, the opera thing, and Neupert, orchestrated by Grieg, Resignation. Okay, fine. So all that stuff's in there. All that stuff's in here, more or less. I mean, there might be like for a tiny extra something or other, it doesn't matter too much. The bottom line is this. We are in fabulous shape. And the reason we're in fabulous shape is because there will always be certain countries that have national traditions or national composers, and they are still nationalist. There's an element of nationalism that still persists and that ensures that native forces will do excellent work in those composers, or at least they'll continuously be performed. So the tradition of performance and the idiomatic approach to performance are secure. But more than that, and this is where things get really interesting, that local tradition has become an international tradition, most of all in Finland. And I was there for this. It was really a wonderful time in the 1990s and 2000s, the end of the 80s, about that time when I was starting to become a music critic. From about 1985 onwards, the Scandinavian countries had lots and lots of money in their cultural ministries dedicated to promoting themselves internationally, whereas before they had been quite insular. You had Finland because of Sibelius, first and foremost. Finnish orchestras, Finnish conductors. Jorma Panula was training conductors all over the place, and we know the result because we have Finnish conductors everywhere, and Finnish record labels and Swedish record labels like BIS, independent labels, and Norwegian orchestras like the Oslo Philharmonic under Maris Janssens, remember him, and the Bergen Philharmonic, and these other orchestras. They all started to become internationally known. And rightly so. I mean, they're absolutely excellent. But they had the subsidy, they had the promotion from the cultural ministries. And after that, they started inviting us critics to come to Scandinavia. This is also true in Denmark. All the music information centers were really going like gangbusters, and they still are. I mean, the Norwegian Music Information Center was a very lovely and friendly place. Thank you, Oslok. Hope you're well. They're all out there doing this stuff, and so we got to go to Scandinavia. We got to go to these countries and see these orchestras. I remember having an absolutely splendid time at the Bergen Festival, and a dinner with the King of Norway and Alfred Schnittke and people like that. It was really quite something. I mean, they had international artists coming, international artists going, and they needed people like little old me to write about it and publicize it. We were only too happy to do so because it was artistically thrilling. Absolutely thrilling once we got over the prices. Anyway, once we got there, because, everything's so expensive there. I always wondered, actually, who bought liquor in duty-free shops. Then I started flying to Scandinavia, and my question was answered. These huge carts clanking with alcohol would show up, at the entrance to each flight. It was all the people trying to get around like liquor duties by buying duty-free alcohol if they were flying back to Scandinavia, except for Robert von Barr and his family. They bought ketchup, they bought condiments, and everything that you could buy at Duane Reade. Really, it was fascinating to see how that all operated for a stupid yokel from the good old U.S. of A. Anyway, that was how we got to know all of these Scandinavian orchestras and all these fabulous ensembles. And they exist today, and they worked very inexpensively, relatively speaking, because they were not well known and they were heavily subsidized. So they were able to secure recording deals with independent labels like Naxos and BIS, and they could record their national patrimony. Not just Grieg, but of course all kinds of composers no one had ever heard of, who were also Scandinavian. People like Dag Viren and in Norway, my goodness, there was Gert Tveit and just wonderful, wonderful names that none of us knew, and now we do, and it's just fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So Grieg is in really, really good shape as we go into the 20th century. All of which goes to show you can't lump everything together in one big, hysterical crisis about the, how terrible culture is. I mean, it's not happening that way. Depends where you are. It depends on who the composer is. It depends on what the resources available are. Each case has to be considered on its own merits. And when it comes to Grieg, we're in awfully fine shape. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.